She lifted it up, staring at it in wonder as she turned it over in her hand. The police officers didn't like that, and the detective repeated her demand again in a tone louder and more commanding than before. The whole thing was so absurd. Everybody was overreacting. Paris wasn't holding a weapon. It was just a shaving tool, one of several straight razors that Jimmy owned because her husband was an old-school guy who liked straight shaves and cassette tapes and landlines. He wasn't even allowed to use his straight razors anymore. The worsening tremor in his hand had rendered them unsafe. So why the hell was Paris still holding the ebony-handled razor he'd bought in Germany decades ago? Everything happened in slow motion. As the detective continued to speak, Paris once again took in the blood spattered across the white marble tile floor, diluted pink from mixing with the bathwater. It was Jimmy's blood, and she knew that if she turned around, she would see her husband behind her, submerged in the deep soaker bathtub where he'd bled out the night before. Paris did not turn around, but she did manage to catch a glimpse of herself in the mirror above the sink, where she saw a woman who looked just like her wearing a tank top splotched with blood. Her hair was tangled and her eyes were wild, the side of her face covered in blood that had oozed from a gash over her right eyebrow. In her hand, Jimmy's old straight razor did look like a weapon. A murder weapon. "Mrs. Peralta, drop the razor," the detective commanded again. Paris finally dropped it. The steel blade landed on the tile with a dull clang, and the uniformed officers moved in on her in a swarm. One of them slapped the cuffs on her, and the detective informed her of her rights. As they led her out of the bedroom and down the stairs, Paris wondered how she would possibly explain this. Years ago, the last time this happened, she didn't have to explain it at all. "I'm sorry, but would you mind turning down the air conditioning?" Paris's nipples are pressing hard against her forearms like ball bearings. Though she'd lived in Seattle for almost 20 years now, the Canadian in her still can't break the habit of apologizing before asking for something. "I'm sorry, it's just really cold back here." The officer in the passenger seat pushes a button on the dashboard repeatedly until the cold air eases up. "Thank you," she says. The officer turns around. "Anything else we can do for you?" he asks. "Need a mint? Want to stop and grab a coffee?" He's not asking real questions, so she doesn't respond. On some level, Paris understands that she's in shock and that the full extent of the situation hasn't hit her yet. At least her self-preservation instincts have kicked in. She knows she's been arrested. She knows she's going to be booked. And she knows she needs to keep her mouth shut and call a lawyer at the first opportunity. But still, it feels like she's watching all this happen from the outside, as if she's in a movie where someone who looks like her is about to be charged with murder. This feeling of disassociation, a word she learned as a kid, is something that happens to her whenever she's in situations of extreme stress. Disassociation was her mind's way of protecting her from the traumas that were happening to her body. While this isn't what's happening now, the feeling of separation between her brain and physical form tends to happen whenever she feels vulnerable and unsafe. Right now, the life she knows, the life she's built, is being threatened. Paris can't float away, though. She needs to stay present if she's going to make it through this, so she focuses on her breathing. As she tells her yoga students, whatever is happening, you can always come back to your breath. Constricting her throat just a little, she takes a slow, deep inhale, holds it, then exhales. It makes a slight hissing sound, as if she's trying to fog up the car window, and the detective's eyes dart toward her in the rearview mirror once again. After a few ocean breaths, ujjayi breaths, Paris is more clear-headed, more here, and she tries to process how the hell she ended up in the back of a cop car on her way to jail. She watches